Hello, everyone. My name is Eric Alexander. I'm the founder and CEO of TC BANDD. I'm excited to welcome you all to the launch of our 2023 Black History Month series. The focus for our series is your worth, your race, your career. I think I'm creative, and so we'll talk about your worth with the Ha-Keem today. We'll talk about racism with Donzel, and we'll talk about your career with Letty. So that's kind of what's framing up the discussion for us today. Session is recorded. And what that will benefit those who are unable to attend, so they can watch. You can watch it any of the sessions that you weren't able to attend on demand on YouTube. And so, how to stay in touch? You can reach out to us by email. You can go to our website to find updates on kind of what we have going on. You can join our LinkedIn group. That gives you an opportunity to continue dialogues after this session or other sessions. And I try to share our upcoming events first in our LinkedIn group, so you have the initial preview of what's coming on by virtue of joining the group, and also on Instagram as well. So, or you can just send us an email or just give us a call. So thanks for your support on that. So one of the things that I offered as part of the registration was that the first 100 registrants were entered into a drawing to get a digital copy of Ha-Keem's new book. And so I don't have a drum roll built into the session, but I'll drum roll internally. So 10 winners of our free digital books are Greg Larson, Michaela Chappelle, Brianna, John, Sheila, Latano, Alicia, Latoya, Caroline, and Michelle. So you have to be present to win. So if your name's listed above, if you can send me a direct IM in Zoom, I'll make sure you get a copy of the book. If I don't get a response by end of the session, I will, go to the next people on the list. So excited to offer 10 copies of Ha-Keem's digital book for the winners. We will also endeavor to give books away for those who are active in the chat or ask questions, that kind of thing. So we want to recognize participation in the session. And so for Ha-Keem, so I've known Ha-Keem for a while now. I consider him a friend. He's a thought leader in the HR space. He has a passion for his family. He has a passion for coaching, both athletics and leadership, and he has a passion to give back to our community. And he does that in multiple ways, but one of those ways is support of TC BANDD. Like with TEDx, you have X number of speakers. So Ha-Keem is a 4X TC BANDD speakers. He's spoken in 2 of our summits and 2 of our sessions. So Ha-Keem is a great communicator. And one of the things I really like about his approach to communication is that he frames the messages in a way that's easily digestible. He takes really complex concepts and he shares them in a way that allows us to kind of understand them and execute against the action plan. So I'm excited to give the group the opportunity to learn from his expertise, and I'm excited to learn as well. So with no further ado, I'll hand it off to Ha-Keem.
Thanks, Eric. I appreciate the time, the introduction. As always, you're too kind. I absolutely, I think, just want to take a moment to say, appreciate the opportunity to talk to TC BANDD. And you have personally, you and many on the call have been huge supporters, connectors throughout my career. And so it's honor actually just to sit and talk to this team today. A little bit about what you see on the screen here, about realizing your worth in ways that you can do that. And so you just did the welcome. I want to go through a brief presentation, and I'll go through some of the concepts and things like that that we'll talk from the book. You mentioned I'm an author, just published in the second book, the hard copy this Monday. And so want to share a little bit of those insights from that, and it's really focused on your worth as well. But what I want to spend a lot of time on is the Q&A. Eric had shared with me, and it sounds like there was a really good survey Q&A done prior to the call on just what would you like to get out of it. And I will go through that, but I will tell you I was pretty impacted by the questions that you asked. And that's where I really want to spend a lot of our time. So we'll spend some time there. Want it to be as interactive as possible. I have the chat up, and so there will be points where we will talk, and I would like to make that as interactive as possible. But certainly, if there are questions that come up as we're discussing, I'll see it. If you send it to everyone, I'll see it in the chat, and maybe we can just discuss real time. So don't hesitate to do that. So Then we'll spend a little bit of time at the end to close. We can go to the next slide. So just a little about me, and I really appreciate the introduction that Eric gave you. So one is I'm in human resources. I've been in HR 20 plus years, and I've had many people tell me, hey, you're not like a traditional HR person. In fact, why are you giving me this specific advice? My HR professional would not give me this advice. And I'll tell you, one of the things that I really focus on and that I've been fortunate is that I've been able to work with a lot of, I would say, top organizations. And I really focus from the business side of it, but I've been in the organizations that I've been a part of are number one or two in the industries that they're in. And I've had the opportunity within that to meet some of the most successful people by any definition of success that you would find in terms of financial, volunteer, networking, net worth, the just people, entrepreneurs. This is for me, I have learned a lot along the way. And in those organizations, you start to recognize a few things. And so today, one, this is really not about me. This is about you. And this is really about how do you go about understanding your worth. And then once you understand it, how do you go out and capture it? How do you realize it? And so that's what I want to spend a lot of time on today, is talking through that. So if we can move forward to the next slide, we'll spend, and so from those organizations that we talked through, that I've been fortunate to be a part of, the one thing that started to happen, and so in my role in HR, I get a chance to talk with a lot of people. I get the chance to talk to senior leaders. I get the chance to talk to individuals working in department stores, in on manufacturing floors. And it's something that I actually see as a lot of value. You want to know the most about an organization, you talk to the people in it. And within that, one of the things that was starting to come up is this idea that people weren't getting clear information as it applied to their career about how do I develop? What does that look like? What's my role in it? Is it my responsibility or is it organization's responsibility? Hey, I've put in so much time, I don't feel like it's a reciprocal relationship. And as you start to have some of those conversations, and as I started to have them, I started to realize some of this maybe misperception, misinformation wasn't shared directly. And so that became the emphasis of my first book. And so if we move to the next slide, then my first book is called You're Worth It: Navigating Your Career in Corporate America. And in it, and what you'll find and what you'll see, and one of the things that you start to learn is that we would never, if we're going to a destination, if you want to go to the movie theater, you would either know where it is and you know how you're getting there, or if you don't know where it is, you put it in your GPS on your phone or in your car. You look and see, is it cold? Is the weather bad out there? Do I need a coat? Do I not need a coat? You dress appropriately. If there's ice, you'd slow down. If it's a nice sunny day, you would go. If there's speed traps, you would be prepared for it, right? So you spend time as you think about where you want to go for dinner or whatever it may be. One of the things I started to realize is that people will get in their career cars and just start driving and hope that you get to the destination. And they weren't even really sure what that destination was. So I just want to get in the car and go and hope my career works out, whatever that may be. In addition to that, what I started to realize is that people weren't even driving their cars. They were actually letting other people drive their cars. And so if you think of your career car, you're in it, you're actually watching someone else drive your career car and tell you where you're going to go. You're not prepared for the weather. You don't know if they're going to be pit stops. You don't know if there are bathroom breaks along the way, any of that, right? So we would never do that with our just going to dinner. Why do we do that with our careers? And so that really became the idea behind this. How do you take back control of your career car and start to determine where the destination, where you want to go? And so in that, I really talk about a few things about organizations, how they're run. A lot of people would come up to me and talk about, I've spent 15 years at this company. They owe me this, that, or another. And I would just say, well, what do they owe you? Like, help me understand, because what type of relationship do we feel like we're in? Or do you feel like you're in with the company? And what you start to realize is they feel like they're in a personal relationship. If I am in a personal relationship, we go out for dinner, we do all those things we talked about before, and we spend years, 5, 10, 15 together. There's equity, there's emotional equity in there. And if I do something, I do expect it to be reciprocated. In an organizational relationship, it's really just contractual. There's a lot more to it, but at the end of the day, did you get paid during those 15 years? And if the answer is yes, that's really the relationship. Everything else in it, I hate to say it so bluntly, but everything else is just, I would say, window dressing. It's just, those are great things. You get development, you get, great relationships, you have your annual holiday meeting, all that stuff. That's great. But at the end of the day, this is not a personal relationship, it's contractual. And so for you to understand that, let's take some steps back. And this is what I call corporate truths. And so I provide 10 corporate truths, how organizations are run from my perspective, right? So, and provide, I think, just pull the mirror back or pull the shades back in terms of how the curtains back and how it's run. And so the first corporate truth is a corporation will always do what's best for itself. And if you start to understand that, then you can start to unwind maybe some of those misconceptions, which is why whenever I have conversations with people, I say, corporations will always do what's best for itself. Why won't you? Why won't you always do what's best for yourself? Which gets it to some of the questions that you asked a little bit later. And then the second half is the worth it insights, and that's really focused on you. How do you improve yourself? How do you know where you want to go? Once you get in the car and you're now driving it, how do you determine where the destination is going to be and where you're going to stop along the way and who might need to help you in order to get there, to help you navigate there? So that's book number one. If we move to the one that it just released, it released the digital version in December and the hard copy on Monday, Realizing You're Worth It. And it's advice, insights, and inspirations to propel your career. The thought here and the mindset behind this one was slightly different. If my first book was really from the viewpoint of an advisor, right? How do you take control of your car, your career car? How do you drive? How do you get to the destination? This one was more of if I'm in your corner. One of the ways that I coach, and I coach sports, I coach people, I coach leaders, I coach organizations. One of the ways that I find that I am best supportive is helping people just see how good they are, like how amazing they are. One of the questions talked about imposter syndrome, and we'll get to that, but you'd be surprised how many amazing people, wonderful people who have created, that have patents for creating new molecules and new to the world ideas and are doing some amazing things in the world, how they don't see themselves that way. They actually have a lot of self-doubt. And so that's when I thought about that and the role I wanted to play in the second book, it was really the advice is kind of just straight up, here's some good things that you should think about, or you may want to think about from a career perspective. The insights, those people that I told you that were successful and that are successful, these are things that they've shared with me that they wish they would have done differently at a younger age or at a different point in time, things that they learned even later in life and they were able to accomplish their goals at different points in their careers. They're things that happened to me that I looked at and said, I think people need to hear or see this and know this. And then the inspirations are truly, from my perspective, you are awesome. Now go help other people be awesome, because I do think that's an accountability and responsibility. And as I reflect, and as those leaders reflected on their careers, they shared countless individuals that helped them along the way. And they made concerted efforts to make sure they were pulling people up and bringing people up with them and providing them insights. And I think of each of you, wherever you are in your careers, we all have an opportunity and an obligation to do that, to help bring others up and along with us and help them to be successful so they can do the same. And this pattern repeats, we will see the rising tide lift all boats. And so that's my sincere hope. It's really what I wrote in the book. And so that's a little bit about both of those. And I will tell you, Eric has trained me a little bit. When Eric and I first met and first started talking, he would say, hey, you need to market yourself a little bit better. You need to do this, to do that. And, you know, he just had that marketing mindset. And some of you on the phone have said the same. And it's that consistent kind of feedback, willingness to learn, and willingness to share your feedback with others that brings us all up. And so I'm not immune to that. And so I continue to try and learn. And so this is a little bit of my marketing attempt, but it's also sincerely what I hope with the books that you get out of it and others get out of it. So we'll go to the next here. What I wanted to do, I'm just going to give you real quick snippets of things that you can expect, or even just some of the ideas, how they would play out for you and your career. Because like I said, I want to spend the majority of the time on your questions, but I do think there's some important concepts or things that you just want to call out. And I was actually on the phone with someone today. He owns his own business. He's run his business for 20 plus years. It's an international business. They've survived COVID. They've, twice. They survived last year with the Great Resignation, and his business continues to thrive. And one of the things that he said to me this morning when we were talking, he's like, I asked him how he was doing. And he said, I'm much better now. And I, of course, I always want to know what people mean by that. And so he shared with me a little bit about what happened with him these last, since 2020 until today. He is and has been, his company is highly successful. They continue to do great things. And he was pushing so hard to keep the business open in COVID, to keep his people during the Great Resignation. They were delivering on expectations and even beyond expectations, and he had his most successful year financially last year. So amidst all that success, he realized something, is that he was driving himself to the point of exhaustion. He was driving himself to a point where he couldn't sustain, and he wasn't actually enjoying the success. Here he'd just come off the most successful year he had, and he couldn't and didn't enjoy it. And he didn't enjoy the stops along the way. And he said to me, and my employees didn't enjoy it. They didn't get a chance to enjoy it. And he was like, so it was doubly stupid. And it was his words, right? So not only did I not get anything out of it, I'm working it out. I'm pushing my people to the same edge. And he said, it was an aha moment for me that I needed to take a step back and realize how far I'd come. Because we don't do that a lot. And I don't know how you are on the phone, but I do this all the time. I push myself to, constantly achieve. And it's hard actually to sit back and say, wow, this is where you started. If you just look a year back, and this is where you were 2 years back, 3 years back, and think of where you are today. Did you celebrate along the way? And if you didn't, there's still opportunity for you to do that. And what I find is that on that road that we're all trying to get to, whatever success we define success as, is make sure you're taking the time for you, for your family, for your friends, for your coworkers, to do those little celebrations. And it's actually harder to do in some cases, because now people can work from wherever. There's a lot of remote work. It's maybe not everyone gets in the office every day. And so it's like easy not to actually. It's easy to just be like, oh, well, I'll do it next time. Or next time we're together, let's figure that out. And the reality of it is that we need that. We all need that. We all need those mini successes to celebrate that, to continue to grow and push it. And so that's just, if there's one, I'm giving a couple pieces of advice, but if there's one thing I've kind of learned from that, it's been just, and not just me, and just several successful people that I know, just to focus on the end result will sometimes have you missing every little thing, those key milestones along the way. And if the only result is the end result, we're going to miss a lot. And so one piece of advice I'd share, if we go to the next slide, the other is, and this is more of my, absolutely. Thank you for the note on improvement. And so this is maybe my HR hat. So I'm just gonna call that out. So I don't know how many, hopefully none of you really ever have to be in these situations, but if you ever are in an investigation, and so just to give a general background, if there's some sort of employee relations issue where at your facility, at your location, at your business, your place to work, depending on the severity of it, it can be, pretty simple, situation to resolve, or it can be one that requires an investigation. During that investigation, generally speaking, there tends to be two parties, but there can be a lot more. But let's just say it's two people. One person has their side, another person has their side. And so usually one person will come in and said, I've been aggrieved. This is what's happening. There needs to be some sort of retribution for this or else, right? And so in the process of doing that formal claim, you conduct the investigation. And in the investigation, you talk to several people. You talk obviously to the two people involved in it, and then you talk to people around the scenario, or who may have been around, or who could tell you about what maybe led up to the situation. And what you start to realize along the way is that there's more than one side of the truth, and that both can be, in depending on which way you view it, both can be true. Both sides can be true. And that's a hard concept sometimes for people to understand. It's like, no, it's my way. This is the way that it needs to be. No, it's my way. This is the way it needs to be. And in unpacking that, people find it hard to reconcile sometimes that their feelings or their viewpoint of the situation isn't the ultimate viewpoint. And that plays out well beyond work, right? In life and, relationships, however you want to look at it. But I say that to say, as you think about your career, people are going to have ideas. You're going to have ideas, thoughts about where you want to go, how you're going to get there, what path it takes to get there. And you're going to think someone said, 5 people went through it and got through it that way. That's the way to get there. That's the truth. And you're going to realize it may not be the truth for you, or that may not be the way for you, or that there are different ways of getting there. And so even if you get advice, you talk to people, you have a mentor, you have a sponsor, you have someone, a supervisor that's taking you through each of the steps and the exact way to get there. And if it's completely spelled out, just realize that there's way more ways to get to where you want to go. And I find, and the reason I say this is because sometimes when things happen like COVID or the career, or, you didn't see, a layoff coming and you were impacted by that, sometimes people feel like it's over, right? My way to the path that I had predicted, I'm not going to get there anymore, or there was just that way. And they get stuck. And because they get stuck, they have a hard time adjusting to that reality. And it keeps them there. And I've seen it time and again. It keeps them there for a while, career-wise, and it takes them a while to adjust. And if you can just get this idea that there's more than one truth, there's more than one way, there's definitely several ways to get to where you want to go, it can sometimes help you get unstuck and get quicker to where you would like to be, and to get past whatever moment or whatever barrier in that moment is keeping you. So want to share that as well. And exactly, someone else's truth may not be your truth. And feel free to stop me, to take yourself off of mute if there's something you want to talk through. And I guarantee you, I want to talk to you as well. This one gets a little bit at a question on imposter syndrome. And let me just tell you, so I read I think it was a New Yorker article that had walked through the history of imposter syndrome. So I'll kind of get at the question a little bit later, but get at it now too. about the lady that actually came up with it. So how she had experienced it in her career, even from a young child, she was being told she couldn't. And later in life, you know, she was sitting down with a bunch of women who were experiencing the same phenomenon. They called it this imposter syndrome. And that's where the phrase was coined. And even now, like when she talks today, it sounds like she didn't think that would be a phenomenon, like the imposter syndrome would catch on and be everywhere, as ubiquitous as it is. And it's something that even now she's like, you know, I'm not 100% proud of it, right? So I thought that was interesting, but the idea, the feeling that we all feel, and I feel like at different points people do feel that, right? And it's this idea that maybe maybe I don't deserve this. Like somehow someone's gonna know. I think I read a quote, and I want to make sure I get it right. So I'm just gonna look at my screen here real quick. But it was something to the tune that Maya Angelou once said, "I've written 11 books, but each time I think, uh-oh, they're gonna find out now." To me, that's amazing. Like Maya Angelou feels like, or felt like, even after all.
No, I'm okay. I got to take off for the airport here in just a few minutes. So thank you very much.
Can I go with you?
for the offer.
Thaddeus, can we go together? I'm just messing. So we can hear you. All right. So wanted to just say, yeah, I mean, if you think about that, that is to me one of the most amazing kind of moments. Someone so successful still has self-doubt. And that's why it seems simple just to say, oh, it's all good, I'm just messing too. So it seems so simple just to say that it's okay, someone else probably deserves it less, however you get there. And this applies in so many different ways. It could be, you know, you got a promotion you didn't expect it, or you weren't laid off and other people were, and you're like, why am I the one? That some people call that like survivor syndrome, right? So you were not impacted by it, everyone else was, or you are now leading your peers, you know, why was it you versus others? Or you feel like you don't have a special skill or something that's useful or unique or different than other people, yet why you're in this situation and people value your opinion. And my feedback on that, and I give stories about it, but my thought on that is it's really simple. I guarantee you someone deserves it less. So just embrace it, enjoy it. It's a positive. There's no guessing in my mind. We can think of 3 or 4 people, 5 or 6 who don't deserve it, right? But that happens, and you shouldn't feel bad. Embrace it, right? So we can talk through it, and I definitely want to hear if people have something more to ask on that. But that question hit home with me, and it was, you know, it's a chapter in my book. We can talk about it. Next one, if we hit there, yeah. So people ask me all the time, how do I know that I'm at the right company, or is the grass all, you know, greener, or should I make this move, or and right? And the idea being is that for some reason or another, I'm not okay with the company that I'm at right now, or that I'm not okay at the company that I'm at right now. And so should I make a move? Is that what I should be doing? And if you start with the idea that there is no perfect company, like I've been at some of the best companies that I've worked with people that have been at some of the best companies in the world. And I'm here to tell you, there is not a perfect company. And if we're looking for that, we're looking in the wrong places, you know, so that is a given. So then it just becomes more of what's the right company for me, for you? What's the right company at the right time for you? Maybe this company that would be a good fit for you, you know, now it isn't one, you know, it isn't the right time for you to be there. Maybe the company you're at right now, this is the perfect time for you to be there. And maybe it isn't in 6 months from now. So the premise, and I'm going to go off camera for just a second here, but I'm still going to speak. The premise on this is this idea, and hopefully you can still see me, this idea that we're always looking for something to be exactly right. like, this hallelujah moment that everything, the sun, moon, the stars, everything lines up. And if it's not out there, if we can just acknowledge that it's not out there that way, then it helps us kind of move on and get to really what matters, which is what's the right company for me right now? What development am I trying to get? And can I get that in my current scenario or situation? Or do I need to move to a different position within the same company? Do I need to go to a different company that offers me the position that's going to get me that development? And so I really try and get people off this idea of, focusing on just the company, because again, the company is always going to do what's best for it. And so are you going to do what's best for you? In order for you to do that, you really need to understand, what are you trying to get out of that? What's the development that you're seeking? What's the next level that you're seeking? And are you able to obtain that in your current opportunity, or do you need to go somewhere else? But remove the idea there's a perfect company. And then this one, just from an inspiration standpoint, what would you do? What changes would you make today if you knew 100% that move would be successful? So, because that to me is like, that's the certainty, that's the perfection that we're looking for. And so, and I ask that question, I ask you to ask that question of yourself, because would you, if you knew it was 100% going to be successful, and we just got, your screen went a little bit smaller there. But if you knew it was going to be 100% successful, what would you do differently? Would you change something right now? Because if the answer is yes, then you seriously need to start thinking about what needs to be true in order for you to make that change. If you knew with certainty the next thing you needed to do would be 100% successful, what would you do? And I just ask you to ask that question of yourself. And you may not know right now, but to take the time, think about it, and depending on your answer, you may want to start thinking about what's next for you. Okay, I'm gonna pause there. What questions do you have? Throw it in the chat, because then we're going to get into your Q&A. And if you have any, great. But while you're thinking about that, or while you're putting that in, Eric and I, so one, Eric put this in, he sorted all your questions and put it in a socio-emotional and functional strategic. And we were looking through that, and we were both impacted. We were both looking at those questions and saying how deep, how thoughtful each of you are for putting those questions forward, for how brave, in fact, to put some of those questions forward, and to say, hey, let's talk about maybe some uncomfortable things. And so let's go to the next slide. I wanted to go through these. I went through them in a bit of an order. So one, the next slide, which is the ones that hit home for me. And part of my job requires having uncomfortable conversations. And so when you say and you ask the questions, how do you balance being authentic, and fitting in predominantly white environments? And so what's meant by that essentially, and this can apply to anyone, any person of color, right, is that a lot of times if you walk in some organizations, there aren't, as many people who look like you. And, what is that? How do you balance kind of being true to yourself? And we're getting a bling on someone's iPad, just FYI on that. So how do we balance being our authentic self, and also being in an environment where maybe we're not, the majority, we're a minority? And so, and that is, for me, it's the question I think you always ask, right? Because sometimes you think, well, if I keep, getting promoted and moving to a different level, and then if I'm in the driver's seat, then I can be truly who I am, and like literally let my hair down, let people know who I am, dress the way I want, and change things then, right? that's one way sometimes people think about it. Another is it's just like, well, I'm going to be who I am all the time, right? And so I'm going to listen to the music I like. I'm going to dress the way that I like, and and the company's got to deal with it. My perspective on it, and for what it's worth, is we always have to be aware of our environment, no matter what, right? Of where we are, work culture, anything like that. But to the extent that, you know, and we got that iPad again, just FYI, I don't know if it can go on mute, but to the extent that we can be true to ourselves and do the job that we're asked to do, I think you should. I honestly think you should. And I'll give you an example. In COVID, one of my favorite things about COVID, and that seems like a weird statement, but it's true, is you started to see people who work remotely. You started to see the kids. You started to see the dogs. You started to see the back of the room that had laundry on the floor, or I had a kid whose face was upside down on the camera, and they were like doing this, and they had snot running down their nose and all like that. And to me, that's the beauty of, I think, where we are, and what I think we should be shooting for when we're talking about an inclusive work environment, is that we should be able to, be our authentic selves at all times, right? Do the work that we're expected to do, absolutely, but be who we are. And to me, organizations that get it, that understand it, realize that part of your identity creates inclusion. And I think that applies to, GLBTQ, it applies to gender, it applies to ethnicity, it applies to a lot of different areas. And so to me, my perspective is that organizations, I think, that are going to be around and thrive, are going to understand that you have to create an environment where people feel comfortable. And so that balance, there's no way for there to be a universal answer for everyone where that fits, because you have to gauge, what that means for you and your situation. But I think that as long as you can do the work that you need to do, my personal point of view is you should be true to yourself. And that may mean like I can tell you there are times when I'm a dork. You should just know that. I just do some of the goofiest stuff, and gifts, and I'll send gifts and things like that. And people are just like, I know they're not getting it. I can look at their faces while I send it, and there's not getting it. But that's me, right? Sometimes I'll just break out in song. I'm not saying I'm a great singer, but that's just me. That's who that's my authentic self. And sometimes that works and sometimes it doesn't. But I do try to bring that, because people can tell authenticity. They truly can. And so that would be how I would answer that. There's no perfect answer to that question, though. And it's an individual decision and how you get there. The advocating for yourself, that one I think is important. And I will tell you, it hit home with me because I don't know that I'm that good at it, just to be honest, and I feel like I've been fortunate. I've had a ton of success throughout my own career. But I would tell you, even as recent as 2-3 years ago, there was this position that opened up in the company, and my supervisor at the time was like, I think you should apply for it. And I was like, what? Why? I'm imposter syndrome. I'm not qualified for that, right? But they essentially saw something, and I had open up conversations with them about where I wanted to go in my career. And we had that kind of trust and built that, relationship where that person said, no, I think you actually need to do that. And in doing that, I didn't get the position, but in doing that, opened my eyes, is that, I think I was like a close second. And it made me realize, no, actually, I should be going about that. And so that's one of the most difficult questions. I personally believe you need a network of people around you that know you, that support you. You need cheerleaders, you need sponsors, you need a mentor, But what you really need is people that can say, you know what, you're a bit stagnant right now. It's time for you to, go. Like you've done this, you've learned your lesson. Now move on, right? It's time for you to push. And the one thing I say, you never get what you don't ask for. And sometimes you do. That's not 100%. But I truly believe, and I use this example so many times, but there's an individual that literally said, I want more money. I want this job title. And if you don't get it, I'm leaving. If I'm the company, I'm like, what? Like, are you what? And they got more money, they got the position, and they stayed at the company. And it was amazing to me. And it happened like in 2 months. They asked for what they wanted. And so my question is, in terms of how do you advocate yourself, is what's keeping you from advocating yourself for yourself? That's the question to ask yourself. Identify what that is, and then address that. Is it that you fear you're going to lose your job? Is it the fear of someone saying no? Is it the what? Inter X, right? So whatever that is, address that, and then start to create that path to advocate for yourself. And then I do think that's similar to this other one in terms of negotiating for your worth. But here's one thing I will say, I do, and this may hit a later question. In order for you to negotiate for your worth, you have to understand your worth. You have to know what the market will bear for your worth, for you, for your skill set, for your competencies, for the value that you create for organizations. And so if you don't have a clear understanding of what that value is, it's really hard to negotiate for it. And so you have to take the time, be it, talking with other leaders in the industry, talking with peers, connecting with, looking at different opportunities and jobs, going through those processes, understanding how others perceive your worth, or different parts of the organization that you're currently in, how others perceive your worth, to get a better idea of what that is so that you can start really driving for that. Because once you understand your worth, then you have a question. Do I need to go get it? Or are there reasons why I'm not fully going after it, be it close to home or easy for me to pick up the kids or whatever it may be? I'm going to go to the next one. I'm going to fly through these other ones a bit quickly because I want to make sure that we have a little bit of time at the end to talk. If you can go to the next slide, please.
Sure. Ha-Keem, I wanted to pause here quickly.
Oh, yeah.
It's in the chat that I wanted to share with you. It says, as a Black person in an influential role, how do you bring DE&I in an organization that may not be ready for a more diverse, inclusive workplace?
Yeah. So I will tell you that what I try to do personally in my job is to create the environment that I want to see within the business that I'm in. But the reality of it, in the person who asked this question, you're absolutely right. The reality of it is that organizations are at different places on all these things. It is not right to think or believe that everyone sits on the same doorstep, same level when you have DE&I, because people are at varying levels of even acceptance of that, willingness to talk about it, wanting it. And so there's no easy answer to answer the question that you are asking. What I really try and focus on is, am I in those organizations that has that value, or am I not? And if I'm not, do I still have the ability to create influence in my field of circle, or do I not? And if the answer is no, then, and if that's important to you, then I think you need to ask there's other questions you probably need to ask yourself, like, should I be here? But if you do have an ability to talk with people, and what I find, what a lot of times people don't want to do, someone says, and I've had this said to me, and there was the company had just announced its diversity goals, and it was diversity, it was goals on women, and it was people of color in the United States. And I had a white employee ask me, do I have a place in this company anymore? And you can listen to that, you can hear that, and I can hear the reactions people might have if you hear that. It's like, what are you talking about? You have privilege, you have this or that, you've had, you know, you've had all these opportunities. What do you talk? But if we just take a step back and think from an empathetic standpoint, what they're really saying is, you know, like for me, how do I fit now, right? And so these are questions we feel all the time, but this was new. And so rather than like condemn, we just talked about it. And that's, to me, I hope that you're at a point, or there are individuals in your organization, whoever asked that question, that you can have a conversation about what does that going to take for us to take that next step. All right, I'm going to hit these up real quick, just and we may not have time to get through all of this. And Eric has already kind of proposed an idea to me that if we want to have a follow-up session to get through some of these other questions that I didn't even put on here, we can do that. And I'm open for that if that's where we are. We talked a little bit about imposter syndrome and a little bit about the realizing your worth. What I would say on that, you know, as a person of color, that there's, however you look at it, there's always kind of these structures, the way organizations work. And if you're trying to create your worth or your value, the best way I've seen is to first understand what that value is. Hard to capture if you don't understand it. Once you understand it, then you get the chance, if you're driving your career car, you get the chance to think about where are those environments where you can thrive. And we're not always given that opportunity, right? Sometimes we just need a job. So we're not always given the opportunity to determine where we want to go. But one thing I will say is that the more choices you make around when you understand your worth, where you're focused on develop, where you're focused on growth, where you're focused on the best places where you can achieve those, it's amazing how these things tend to kind of build upon themselves. But like other questions asked, this is very specific to you, right? In your situation and what you're in. And so there's no perfect answer, but these are things that if you have that group, and I hope it's a diverse group of advisors and mentors and sponsors and people that you trust to help give you some of that feedback and a more well-rounded view of yourself, then you can start to see people can also give you feedback as to what things may be holding you back. And it could be the way that you're thinking about things. It could be that you're, you know, creating this sense of that you may not be able to do these things because of certain situations. And until you like get through that, it's going to be difficult, but that one's personal. And certainly I'm open to talk to people if you have specific situations you want to share. Let's do that. And then the childhood trauma, I'm gonna talk through this one, and then Eric, I'm not going to do the last one, right? So we'll stop the last Q&A, and then I want to open it up. The childhood trauma one, this is one, and I'm not even lying to you all. This is one that we could probably spend hours on. Like, I can tell you literally the impact of some of the things that happened to me as a child that I'm still dealing with, that I'm still working my way through. And that may always be with me, that just because of my personal upbringing. And so there sometimes we just need a friend. Sometimes we need to address the source of that childhood trauma. Sometimes we need a psychiatrist or a psychologist to help us work through that. Sometimes, and this is probably the most underused benefit that we all have. I would say not all of this, but I would say most companies have, is your employee assistance program. Oh my word. Like you get free sessions in most cases to start out with a lot of those programs that can help you. And it's the most underutilized benefit that organizations offer their employees. A lot of organizations, especially larger ones, offer their employees, use it. But that childhood trauma, that's real. Yeah, I'm gonna stop there. I was hoping that we get a chance to do more. I did more talking than I wanted, so let me stop with that. Let me pause. There's so much worth in terms of what you all were asking. I think as I sit through and think through this, how do you go through the questions we talked through today? Take the steps to understand your worth, and then put yourself in the driver's seat, and then start doing the things that are going to help you get to where you want to go developmentally and within your career. And when you ask yourself these questions, if there are things that are holding you back or from keeping you from where you're going, identify them and find out what's been keeping you from achieving those opportunities. What's keeping you from taking that next step? Be that mental, be that physical, be that whatever it may be. And what have you been putting off that you should be doing right now? As you think about, and if this hopefully gave you some ideas and thoughts, and you're like, I need to do that today, don't wait. Write it down and figure out a path to get there. And with that, I'll stop.
Great. Thanks, Ha-Keem. As always, great insights, great clarity. And again, as I shared in the beginning, you do a great job of talking about high level, complex things and sharing them in a way that's digestible and sharing real, actionable, functional tips and strategies to address really complicated concerns. So I appreciate your partnership. I appreciate your friendship, and I appreciate your engagement with TC BANDD. We are almost at time. We can squeeze in potentially one live question if someone has it to share. You can come off mute and ask it. Otherwise, we'll move to wrap up. Okay. Ha-Keem, I assume my perspective on that is when I don't get questions at the end, that means I answered them all as part of the session. So I'm gonna assume that you answered all the relevant questions during the session. So thanks for your time. Thanks for engagement. Did you want to wrap up with any last comment, Ha-Keem?
Yeah, just if you go to the next slide, obviously, this is the obligatory public service announcement that Eric has helped me figure out that everyone needs an advisor, someone to tell them. But I have a ton of articles, videos, kind of obviously my books that are talking about, but you can reach out to me on coachhakeem.com. I've got my email address on there, and I really do. I try to make time for everybody. It's not always possible for us to talk face to face. Sometimes it's just over email. Sometimes it's just on LinkedIn messaging, whatever it may be. But I truly do want each of you to be as successful as you want to be, right? And so, and if there's anything I can do to help you get there, don't hesitate to reach out to me. I appreciate your time today. And this is wonderful that TC BANDD continues to do this. Eric, thanks for the friendship and the partnership. All of you, obviously, if there's, again, anything I can do, don't hesitate. Thanks.
Great, thank you. Thanks everybody for joining. Thanks for your focus, and we look forward to seeing you at our upcoming Black History Month sessions. Have a good remainder of your day, and thank you.